a reminder, the question is never, do you look good? It's, can other people handle it? And I mean, that's not really...
Yeah, tell your neighbor, you may have my history. Tell your neighbor, keep it. I have my future. My destiny is greater than my history. Where I am going is better than where I am coming from. The devil is a liar.
The sun had barely begun to rise over the coast of Jamaica when the peaceful stillness of the morning was broken by an unsettling sight. In the distance, a figure floated among the calm waves. It seemed out of place, an ominous sign against the brightening sky. As the fishermen and early joggers passed by, they could never have imagined that this would be the day a life, once full of promise, would end in such a shocking and brutal way. The ocean was calm that morning, but beneath the surface, the calm hid something far more chilling. It wasn't until a marine police officer approached the water's edge that the full horror became apparent. The officer's discovery was just the beginning of a nightmare that would rock Jamaica and leave the nation in disbelief. The body they found wasn't just a casualty, it was a life filled with dreams and aspirations, now reduced to tragedy. This was the body of Annika Slickiana Townsend, a vibrant woman who had captured the hearts of thousands online. To the world, she was more than just a social media influencer. She was a mother, an entrepreneur, someone who had fought to escape the life she was born into. Her face, her smile, her energy, all now gone. Annika's presence on Instagram was undeniable. Her followers loved her authenticity. She was relatable, someone they could look up to. She shared her joys, her struggles, and her aspirations as a mother, a woman building her business from the ground up. She wasn't just a name on a screen. She was a voice of inspiration to many. But who would want to silence that? Who could betray the trust of someone like Annika? Someone who had built her life on sharing moments of joy and connection with the world. As news of her death spread, her name became a trending topic. People mourned her loss, but even more than that, they demanded answers. What had happened in the hours before she was found lifeless in the water? What had gone wrong? It was only the beginning of a chilling investigation that would reveal dark secrets, twisted betrayals, and a shocking crime that no one saw coming. But the story of her death is more than just a mystery. It's a story of trust gone wrong, of manipulation, and ultimately, of a predator hiding in plain sight. It's the story of how someone seemingly ordinary can turn the world upside down with just a single act of violence. And behind it all lies the question, who was the man trusted by this woman, this mother, this rising star? This isn't just the story of a life lost, it's a story of betrayal, of twisted deception, and of a woman who had trusted someone she shouldn't have. As the investigation began to unfold, more chilling details surfaced. The world watched, waiting for justice. But the road to justice would be long and fraught with obstacles. And for those who knew her, the question lingered, could they have done something to prevent this? Could they have seen the warning signs before it was too late? Before we dive into the chilling details of Annika's life, her rise, and the tragic events leading up to her death, welcome to City Crime Tales. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We cover true crime cases that deserve to be heard and investigated, stories that don't always make the headlines. Your support means the world to us, and you won't want to miss the next chapter in this gripping case. How much do we really know about the people we trust? In today's world where everything is shared online, how much is too much? Could something like this have been prevented? Born and raised in Waterhouse, St. Andrew, Jamaica, Annika's life wasn't easy. She grew up in a neighborhood where violence and poverty were all too familiar. Waterhouse was a community known for its struggles, a place where dreams were often crushed under the weight of reality. But for Annika, it wasn't the environment that defined her. It was the fire inside her that set her apart. When she was still young, tragedy struck. Annika's father passed away, leaving her mother Joyce to raise 4 children alone. It was a heavy burden for Joyce, who worked tirelessly to make ends meet. But no matter how tough things got, Joyce never stopped fighting for her children. She was determined to show them that there was more to life than what the streets offered, that they had the power to build a different future for themselves. Annika wasn't like the other kids around her. Even as a child, she had a drive that set her apart. While many simply learned to survive, Annika was determined to break free. She had a fire inside her, a hunger to rise above the circumstances she was born into. Teachers at school saw it too. They recognized something special in her, not just in her work ethic, but in her rare ability to understand people, to connect with them on a deeper level. Her friends would tell you that Annika had an unwavering loyalty. If you were her friend, you could count on her. If you were her family, you had a fierce protector. It was these qualities, this deep sense of loyalty, that would later become her strength. But they also made her vulnerable to those who could see her trusting nature and use it against her. Her childhood wasn't easy, but it was formative. It shaped her into someone who wouldn't just survive, she would rise. And rise she did. Despite all the odds stacked against her, Annika would grow into a woman who would defy expectations. She would become more than just a survivor of her environment. She would become a beacon of hope to many, a living testament to what could be achieved if you dared to dream big. It wasn't just about overcoming the odds of poverty or growing up in a tough neighborhood. It was about something deeper. Annika knew that her story didn't have to be defined by her circumstances. She was determined to write her own future, one where she would make her own choices and build something bigger than herself. Do you think adversity builds character, or creates cracks in people that others can exploit? As Annika grew older, her world began to shift. She wasn't just growing up, she was growing into a role that would change her life forever. The birth of her son became a pivotal moment, not just in her life, but in her entire vision for the future. From the moment she held him in her arms, everything changed. The struggle, the hustle, the dreams, they were no longer just for herself. They were for him. Her son became the center of her universe. The promises she made to herself in those early, quiet moments of motherhood were clear. She would work tirelessly to give him a better life, a future far removed from the struggles she had known growing up. But survival was never enough for Annika. She didn't just want to survive, to scrape by, she wanted to thrive. She wanted to show her son that there was another world, one filled with opportunities, a world where hard work and dedication could lead to real success. And then the opportunity she needed arrived: social media. It wasn't just a place for posting pictures. For Annika, it became the platform through which she would share her life story with the world. The world of social media wasn't just about posting glamorous selfies or highlighting achievements. For her, it was a chance to tell her real, authentic story: the highs, the lows, the struggles, and the triumphs. And that's where Slickiana was born. Slickiana wasn't just a brand or a title. It was a reflection of who Annika was. Her posts weren't about the glamorous moments that influencers typically showcased. No, her posts were real. They were raw, relatable. The sleepless nights, the late-night meetings, the missed family events, the exhaustion. She showed the world the truth, that building something from nothing meant sacrifices. It meant struggling. But it also meant having faith in the future, in the dream that kept you going when the weight of the world seemed too much to bear. Her authenticity was her power. It didn't matter if she wasn't perfect. What mattered was that people could see themselves in her. Her struggles resonated with so many, especially other mothers who were juggling it all. They weren't just following an influencer. They were following someone who understood them. Someone who had climbed out of the same struggles they faced every day. As her following grew, so did her influence. What started as an outlet for sharing her own story transformed into something far bigger. Brands began to take notice. Clothing companies, wellness brands, beauty lines, they all wanted to work with her. And with each partnership, her platform grew, and so did her empire. Slickiana was no longer just an influencer. She was a businesswoman. A woman building an empire, one post at a time, with every genuine. Her followers didn't just see her as a figure on a screen. They saw her as a role model, someone who had started from nothing and was making something real. Slickiana wasn't just about the luxury items or the fashion shoots. It was about her ability to turn struggles into triumphs and help others feel like they too could build their dreams. And in a world that often hides the hard work behind the success, Annika's authenticity made her stand out. But with her rise came inevitable pressure. The more successful she became, the more her life became a target for critics, for haters, for those who envied her success. Her personal life, her past, all became fodder for gossip and judgment. The reality was, the more she put out there, the more she had to protect. What she thought would be a vehicle to create change, to help others, became the very thing that put her under the microscope of society's harshest critics. Yet, no matter how much hate or negativity she faced, Annika kept pushing forward. The brands kept coming, the followers kept growing, and the empire she built became a testament to her resilience. But as the spotlight grew brighter, so did the dangers lurking in the shadows. In a world where everyone's lives are on display, how much of the real person is hidden behind the image? How much is too much to share, and what do we lose when we expose everything? But behind the success, the cameras, and the glamour, there was one man, Rushan Patterson. To the outside world, he seemed like the perfect match for someone like Annika. He was charming, well-dressed, and presented himself as a successful businessman. At first, he didn't appear to have any flaws. A smooth talker, a man who knew how to catch attention, and for a woman who was working hard to build her own empire, Patterson seemed like the type of man who could make her life even better. Their connection started online just like many relationships today. Patterson began leaving thoughtful comments on Annika's posts, complimenting her work ethic and success. He praised her business savvy, engaging with her content in ways that made her feel seen and appreciated. Eventually, their interactions led to meeting in person. He presented himself as someone who had it all together, the kind of man who could elevate her life, someone who understood the pressures of building a brand. For a time, it seemed like the perfect romance. He swept her off her feet with gifts, romantic gestures, and a presence that made her feel special. The posts on social media, the photos of them together, the gifts, the weekend trips, all painted a picture of a couple in love, a couple that had everything figured out. But like so many stories that begin in perfect harmony, this one too began to show signs of cracks. As time went on, those cracks began to widen. Behind the smiles and lavish gifts, Patterson started to reveal a darker side. His possessiveness grew stronger. What began as subtle jealousy over her interactions with other men on social media turned into full-blown control. He couldn't handle the success she was building, the fact that she was becoming independent, that she was rising above the life that had once held her back. Patterson couldn't accept that she was thriving on her own terms, and that made him feel powerless. The signs were there. The controlling behavior, the accusations, the constant need to monitor her every move. But like so many, Annika was too caught up in the romance to see the danger brewing beneath the surface. She was still building her life, chasing the dreams she'd promised herself and her son. But Patterson's true nature began to surface in ways that were impossible to ignore. Patterson's jealousy soon escalated. He wasn't just concerned about her interactions with other men. He began isolating her from her support system. He didn't want her to talk to friends, to receive help from family, to confide in anyone but him. He grew increasingly angry when she spent time working or with her son. What started as a series of manipulative, controlling actions spiraled into a pattern that was impossible to ignore. What was worse, Patterson wasn't just any man, he had a history. A dangerous one. His past was riddled with allegations of violence, manipulation, and deceit. Yet somehow his charm and status allowed him to slip through the cracks of the justice system. Despite being linked to prior accusations of fraud and assault, Patterson was free to continue his dangerous behavior, and now he had found a new target in Annika. What did Annika see in him? Perhaps it was his charm, his seeming success, or the way he made her feel special. But the truth is, she had no way of knowing how dangerous he really was. Not yet. She had trusted him, opened up to him, let him into her life. The more Patterson tried to control her, the more he resented her success. But the relationship wasn't just toxic, it was dangerous. He couldn't accept that Annika had built something for herself, something that didn't rely on him. In his mind, she belonged to him. And when someone becomes obsessed with controlling you, there's no telling how far they'll go to keep their grip. In the beginning, it seemed like a romance straight out of a fairy tale, but by the end, It had become something far darker, far more dangerous. Patterson's possessiveness and jealousy would eventually become the ultimate betrayal. But how did it go from a toxic relationship to something far more sinister? That's the question we'll answer in the next chapter of this haunting tale. Do you think we can ever truly know someone just from the image they project online? How do we know when we're seeing the truth, or just an illusion? Let me hear your thought in comments below. As Patterson's behavior grew more erratic, Annika reached a breaking point. His constant messages, the constant pressure, it was too much to handle. For weeks, she had tried to create distance, but Patterson wouldn't let go. His attempts at controlling her only escalated. It wasn't just the calls, it was the threats. The late-night messages that appeared from different numbers. The accusations that she was ignoring him, that she was choosing work and family over him. He didn't understand or didn't want to understand that she was done. She had blocked his number. She had warned her friends about his increasingly threatening behavior. Yet, the more she pushed him away, the more aggressive he became. Despite her efforts to sever ties, Patterson was relentless. He knew how to manipulate, how to make her feel guilty. He sent her messages that played on her emotions, tried to make her feel responsible for the pain he was in. No one knew what he might do next, but one thing was clear. Patterson wasn't ready to accept rejection. He wasn't going to let her go that easily. Then, on October 20, 2022, after days of back-and-forth messages, after all the tension had built to a boiling point, Annika made a choice. Despite everything that had happened, despite the warnings from her friends, she agreed to meet him one last time. She thought it would be just one last conversation. A way to finally end the chapter, to close the door on a relationship that had turned toxic. She thought she could explain, set boundaries, and walk away for good. She believed this meeting could give her the closure she needed to move on with her life. But Patterson had other plans. His need to control, to possess, had only grown. They met at a restaurant, one that was supposed to be a neutral ground for conversation. The tension between them was palpable. Patterson, wearing his usual calm exterior, tried to present himself as reasonable. But Annika felt something was wrong. She could feel the shift, the undercurrent of anger that simmered just below the surface. Neighbors reported hearing shouting from inside the restaurant. It wasn't just a conversation, it was a confrontation. Patterson was angry and his words became sharper, more threatening. Annika tried to stay calm, tried to reason with him, but the more she tried to explain, the more his emotions escalated. What started as a calm discussion quickly spiraled into something far more dangerous. Patterson's jealousy and rage had reached a boiling point. He couldn't handle the fact that Annika was moving forward with her life, that she had decided to sever ties with him. His love, or what he twisted as love, had turned into something far darker. By the time their meeting was over, the damage had been done. As the argument escalated, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a breakup. This wasn't just a conversation gone wrong. Patterson wasn't willing to let her go, and the man she thought she knew had become a stranger. A man capable of far more than she could have ever imagined. By the time the night ended, Annika had no idea that she would never return home to her son. She left the restaurant, thinking she had taken the last step in closing the chapter of her life with Patterson. But for him, the game was just beginning. This wasn't about closure. This wasn't about ending things. This was about control, and Patterson wasn't ready to let her go. Her final decision to meet him one last time would ultimately cost her everything. And though she left the restaurant that night with a sense of finality, Patterson's plans were only beginning to unfold. By the time morning came, the world would be a very different place for those who loved her. What would you have done in her shoes? Would you have walked away for good, or would you have given in to the desire for one last conversation to close the door on everything? The next morning, the unthinkable happened. What had been a quiet, peaceful start to the day quickly turned into something that would haunt the community for weeks to come. Early morning joggers near Reading, St. James, spotted something unusual in the water. At first, it appeared to be debris, but as they got closer, they realized it was a body of a woman face down in the ocean. As authorities arrived and began their investigation, it quickly became clear that this was no accident. The body was that of Annika Slickiana Townsend, the social media influencer, the mother, the woman who had worked so hard to escape her circumstances and build a better life. But what happened to her? How did she end up in the sea? The initial autopsy confirmed the terrifying truth. Annika had not drowned. She had been strangled. Her life had been violently taken from her, and the peaceful surroundings of the ocean only masked the brutality of her death. It was a murder, and it was one that would haunt the country for weeks to come. But even as the investigation unfolded, questions lingered. Who was responsible for her death? Who would take the life of a woman who had so much to live for? And why? As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the man who had been the last to see her was Rushan Patterson, the same man who had promised her a future, yet ended her life instead. Patterson had convinced Annika that he could be a part of her life, that they could build something together. But in the end, he was the one who took everything from her. At first, Patterson denied any involvement. But as the investigation progressed, it became clear that he had been lying. He had been the last person to see Annika alive. He had known exactly what happened, but he wasn't talking. But the evidence was mounting, and soon the truth would come out. What followed was a relentless hunt for justice. Patterson's past came back to haunt him. A man with a history of violence and manipulation, a man who had gotten away with so much, now had to face the consequences of his actions. His criminal record, one that had been overlooked by authorities before, now became the centerpiece of the case against him. How had he been allowed to roam free for so long? Patterson's arrest sparked outrage among those who had followed the case. The justice system had failed before, but now it seemed they had finally found the truth. The pressure from the public was immense, and every new detail about Patterson's dangerous behavior only fueled the fire for justice. But even as Patterson was taken into custody, there were still more questions than answers. The investigation, however, didn't stop with Patterson's arrest. It became clear that the justice system had failed to protect other women who had been victims of Patterson's violent behavior in the past. Women who had tried to press charges, only for their cases to be dismissed or their voices ignored. How many victims do we miss before the justice system finally takes action? It wasn't just about the murder of Annika. It was about the failure of a system that let a known predator continue to harm women for years without consequence. And for Annika's family, the painful reality was that the justice they sought would be a long and winding road. Even with Patterson behind bars, the pain of their loss would never go away. This case wasn't just about a single murder. It was about a justice system that failed to protect the most vulnerable. It was about the broken promises that Patterson had made, promises he never intended to keep. And it was about the real lives behind the headlines, the families who were left picking up the pieces after the truth came to light. How many victims do we miss before the justice system finally takes action? Can we ever truly trust the legal system to protect us? Or are we always left to fend for ourselves when the system fails? Annika Slickiana Townsend was more than just an influencer. She was a mother, a daughter, and a woman who fought to rewrite her story. She wasn't just posting curated moments of her life for the world to see. She was building something real, something lasting, not just for herself but for her son, for her family, and for those who looked up to her. She showed that with hard work, authenticity, and resilience, anyone could break free from their circumstances and build a better life. But the trust she placed in the wrong person took it all away. This case is a reminder. Even the most perfect lives can hide dark secrets. Even the people who seem to care the most, the ones we trust with our hearts, can become the very ones who betray us. And sometimes the person you trust the most is the one who will betray you the hardest. Annika's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a wake-up call. A reminder to be careful of the people we allow into our lives, and to never let our guard down no matter how safe we feel. But as tragic as her death was, it has sparked a conversation about trust, safety, and the dangers of trusting the wrong person. Annika's story has made people rethink who they let into their lives, who they trust, and how much they're willing to expose on social media. It's a lesson that we all need to learn. This has been City Crime Tales. If this story moved you, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories that need to be heard. We cover cases that deserve to be brought to light, so hit that subscribe button, share this video with your friends and family, and stay tuned for more. If you feel moved by this story, don't let it fade away. Let's keep these conversations going. And as always, I'll leave you with this question. In a world where we share everything online, how much of our trust is too much? Let me see your views in the comment below.